guys, I'm Nyan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the book buffet tag. And so I first saw this tag done by Lauren on her channel Paperback Empire, and I will link her video so in case you want to check that out. And I'll also make sure all the prompts are in the description. So let's get started. First is Appetizer, a short story, novelette, or novella that you wish could be expanded to a full-length novel or get a novel-length sequel. So for this one, I am going to talk about a short story that's in this collection. This is the Book of Dragons, and specifically the story Matriculation by L. Catherine White. And so in general, I don't read a ton of short fiction just because I think just in general, especially with fantasy, I just like having a novel-length story in the world with the characters or whatever it may be, because it's just like with fantasy, especially when you're introducing all these new worlds and things, I just want more than I would in maybe, you know, contemporary fiction set in our world where I'm already familiar with the world kind of thing. And so I don't read a ton to start with, but I picked up this anthology in late 2020 as part of the Our Fantasy bingo board because I needed short stories to fill out one of the prompts, and I thought dragon short stories could be fun. And the story Matriculation was like probably the only short fiction book or story that I've read where at the end I was like actively angry it was a short story and not a full novel. Like lots of them, like, dang, it'd be kind of cool if there was more, but that one I was like, are you kidding me? That's it? We're leaving it there? Because it like told like a little vignette, but I was like, where's the rest of the story? I want more. And like in a good way. It wasn't like she wrote it poorly and just like left off the story. Just she hooked me so much into her world and character that I just like wanted more. And so Matriculation follows this girl who lives in this fantasy, high fantasy urban setting, and she's about to start school at the local Institute for Magic Technicians. She's like a scholarship student, and she has this metal dragon that she built and like rides on, and it was delightful and I loved it so much, and I still wish I could just read more of it. Next, Salad Bar. Pick 3 ingredients, plot elements, writing styles, tropes, etc. that would be in your ideal book salad. So my 3 are magic school, because I am a sucker for a magic school, and it could be kind of any iteration. It doesn't have to be like a strict building school. It could be any kind of take on magic school. I'm into all of them. 2, enemies to lovers, romance subplot. I love good enemies to lovers, and I love romantic subplots in my fantasy. And 3, nautical setting. So that's the third one. The first 2, you know, could go together pretty easily, not that hard. You know, the last 2 could go together pretty easily, but doing the magic school setting and a nautical setting, I've never seen that done before. And I'd be very into it. Be very into it. I don't know if that exists anywhere, but if that exists and you've heard of it, you should let me know immediately so I can read it. Okay. Next, Dosa Station, a slim volume that packs a significant punch, which, side note, I have no flippin' idea what a Dosa Station is. If you know what that is, tell me. So this one, again, I don't read a lot of like novellas, and to me slim volume kind of means novella or short novel, but I chose the Ascent to Godhood by Nyan. This is the 4th and final book in a series of novellas called the Tensorate series, and it might be I think it's one of 2 novellas I've ever given 5 stars, the first being the first novella in this series, The Black Tides of Heaven. So this is a steampunk fantasy series, and it's kind of, each book is kind of like just vignettes in this world, and I just really loved them. This is one of the few times I've read a novella and didn't necessarily want a full-length novel in the world. Like, I'd take it, but it didn't leave me feeling like I wanted more, because Nyan really knew how to just pack it in to a short package. And so that's why I chose it. And I chose the Ascent to Godhood just because it's my favorite of the series, but it's kind of the whole series. But they just pack so much into each volume. I'm impressed. Like I get to the end and it feels like I've read like a novel, like a shorter novel, but a novel-length story and not just a novella. And it's really impressive. And I really enjoyed this series. I binged them in 2020. I think I like had downloaded them. I downloaded at least one of them as like my free Tor download, and then I was like, this is incredible. So that is my answer for that question. Next, Pasta, a book that brings you comfort and leaves you fully satisfied and content when you're done with it. So I chose a romance for this one, and that is The Devil and the Heiress by Harper St. George. This is one of my favorite romances, and it's one of 2 that I found myself rereading just in chunks. Like I'll just like be in the mood one day and pick it up and just like read 4 or 5 chapters and then like mark my page and put it down and then not pick it up again for like 3 months. I'll just like pick it back up right where I stopped and just keep reading a few chapters. I've also reread the whole book at least once since it came out, so we read all of it, but so There's two books I had to do with this one that I do that with, and this is the less well-known one, so I decided to talk about this one. And I just like being able to do that with a book. It's just so comforting to be able to sit down and just like, I have 30 minutes to read one day, and I'm just like kind of in that kind of mood. I'll just read for 30 minutes and then just move on and go back to my other books. And that's just like a nice, comforting read for me in that way. Next, Beef, a book that is hearty, whether it's long, filled you up with gooey warmth, or was just a slog to get through. And so this is kind of long and also a slog to get through, but I still enjoyed it. So that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Jumaa. And so this is a chunker. According to Goodreads, it is the longest book I've read, page-wise. It took me 6 months to read, partially because I did initially start off purposefully kind of slow, because my husband and I were buddy reading it, and he's a slower reader than I am, and I was reading this as like a background book in addition to like my main book, but it did also kind of just end up being a slow read by nature more than by my choice, because it's just like a slog to get through. Like it's just really long, and it just is, but I still enjoyed it. Like when we got to the end, I overall enjoyed the story. I'm really glad I read it. I definitely don't regret it. So it was like one of those books, I don't know, it's kind of a weird experience. Well, it felt like a slog to get through often, but I still enjoyed it in the end kind of deal. It's definitely a good story. So if you're interested in, you know, long French classics, I'd say give Count of Monte Cristo a try. Bread. Something you and your friends fight over while waiting for your dinner is the bread basket. Talk about a book you fight with other people about. So I didn't really have any like books that I feel like I really fight with other people about. I guess like I don't know, like I feel like on Discord discussions or maybe even books I have differing opinions on people, but I feel like I've never really fought about that. We maybe just like discussed why they didn't like it and why I did, or vice versa. Never really felt like a fight. And then like same thing with like people I know in real life I talk about books. It never really comes off as a fight. So this is a tangential, so my answer for this is less about the book and more about a character from that book, and that is Elend in The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. So I love Elend. He's one of my favorite characters. I don't know, the bookish boy just does it for me. It did it for me in high school when I first read this book. I'm just here for it. And so my husband picked up these, I don't know, like 2 years ago, a couple years ago. He read the first one and really liked it, and he got to this one, and he ended up DNFing it because he hated Ellen so much that he just like didn't want to read it. He just found him so boring that he just like never wanted to pick it up because he just didn't want to read about him. So he DNF'd it. And I love Ellen. So that's like kind of the closest I guess I've had to fighting about it, like truly fighting, is our vast differing opinions on Ellen in the series. Next is Cheese Room, a book with a happily ever after ending. So that's like every romance book, of which I read many. So I was like, I gotta choose one that I would like to talk about. So I chose It's in His Kiss by Julia Quinn. So this is the 7th book in the Bridgerton series, and it is one of 2 in the series that I gave 5 stars, the other being The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is a very popular book in that series, but this one is a really underrated book in that series. So for that reason, I decided to talk about it. Everyone loves The Viscount Who Loved Me. Like, that one's super common to be #1 favorite, but I like never see, no one like ever has It's in His Kiss as their #1, which to be fair, it is my #2. It's not my #1, but like no one ever has it in their top favorites, and I love it. It was easily my second favorite in this series. Hyacinth I think is my favorite Bridgerton daughter. She just has this like dry wit in her personality that I just really loved reading. And Gareth, the hero, was a rake with a heart of gold, which is kind of a story trope in historical romance, but I just loved it in this one. And then they just had the most simple love story. Like, it didn't have any elaborate trope. There was no fake dating, no setup, no marriage of convenience. They were just 2 people who like ran into each other a bunch at social events and then just kind of talked and kind of fell in love. Like, it was really, and like, I love tropes, don't get me wrong, I love tropey romance, but there was just something really nice about throwing this simple one into the middle of the series. In addition, the non-romantic storyline has Hyacinth helping Gareth translate his grandmother's diary, which was left to him in an inheritance, and from that translation they end up tracking down these lost jewels, and it was so fun. And the epilogue in this one is easily my favorite Bridgerton epilogue. So yeah, just want to give a little love to what I think is a very underrated entry into the Bridgerton series, this is book 7. I don't remember if I said that, but yeah. And then lastly, Chocolate Fountain. When you read a new series or author, do you dip in and out, or do you read it all back to back? Definitely dip in and out. If I find an author I like, then I'm like, oh, I like this, I definitely want to keep reading, I'll definitely like move their backlist kind of up on my back in my mind priority list, but I won't usually binge them back to back. I'll just like actively slowly find them more than I would have otherwise. And then with series, I am in the middle where I used to have so much space between series. Like in high school, I would like always just read like book ones when they came out, like the new releases, and then so it'd be a year between the next one. And that's why I have so many unfinished series, because I love so much time, I just forget what happens and then forget to finish them. But then in college, I kind of switched and started binge series more. And then now I've kind of settled into somewhere in between where I try to read series close together if I can, and then without leaving tons of space, but I don't necessarily binge them back to back anymore, because I just like to like bounce between things. It keeps me out of a slump, I think, to bounce between genres, bounce between even just different subgenres. So definitely dip in and out, but it's somewhere in between like huge dips and then binging. So okay, that was the book buffet tag. So if you want to do this tag, then go for it. I'm not going to tag anyone specifically, but yeah, this was a fun tag, a little bit different, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!